The first 3 hours of the flight were uneventful. Calm skies, quiet passengers, and nothing out of the ordinary. Then came the jolt. Turbulence rocked the aircraft, followed by an eerie announcement over the speaker. "We need your attention. This plane is now under our control." A chill ran through the cabin. Unbeknownst to the hijackers, seated quietly in 17A was not just any passenger, but Ibrahim Traoré, the transitional president of Burkina Faso. Wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, dressed in casual jeans and a dark shirt, he was traveling incognito after a discreet diplomatic mission in Paris. His plan was simple: avoid the spotlight, return home quietly. But fate had something else in store. Air France flight AF 726, bound for Ouagadougou, had taken off with 182 souls on board, mostly French tourists, business travelers, and Burkinabe nationals returning home. Traoré, avoiding the fanfare of official travel, had boarded like any ordinary man. But now that decision placed him in the middle of a crisis. The tension began when a flight attendant, mid-service with a tray of hot tea, spotted 4 men rising abruptly. At first, it looked like a disagreement, until the flash of metal confirmed her worst fear: a gun. She dropped the tray, scalding tea splashing onto the floor. "Nobody move!" shouted one of the men in Arabic, laced with a French accent. "The plane is under our control. Obey and no one gets hurt." Panic swept the cabin. Screams, crying, prayers whispered into shaking hands. 2 hijackers rushed to the cockpit. The other 2 took positions, one at the front, one at the back, forcing silence with their weapons. "Hand over your phones, tablets, electronics," one of them barked. "Anyone who resists will regret it." Traoré, calm and watchful, slipped his phone into the seat pocket before the chaos fully unraveled. With his military background, he understood one thing clearly. The first moments of a hijacking were the most dangerous. The hijackers were still trying to gain control, not yet organized, not yet fully in charge. Soon one of them returned from the cockpit and faced the passengers. "Listen carefully. We are not here to hurt anyone. Our demands are simple: $10 million and the release of 3 prisoners from Lante prison in France. Comply, and you go home. Resist, and blood will be on your hands." Traoré studied the man, tense, nervous, but not erratic. Not a professional militant, more likely a radicalized believer in a cause. The aircraft, now veering off course, was circling over Mali. The pilot was stalling, buying time while negotiations began from the ground. Next to Traoré, an elderly Burkinabe woman trembled. Across the aisle, a mother tried to calm her 2 children. A few rows ahead, French businessmen whispered among themselves, terrified. "Don't worry," Traoré said gently to the woman beside him. "You're Burkinabe, aren't you?" she asked, eyes moist. "Yes, mother." "And we'll all make it home." Suddenly, shouting, a hijacker stormed out of the cockpit, grabbed a middle-aged French passenger, and began dragging him forward. "They're not taking us seriously," he yelled. "Maybe if we send a hostage, they'll listen better." Time stopped. This was the turning point. Traoré had 2 options: reveal who he was and offer himself in the man's place, or stay silent and risk lives. But before revealing his identity, he chose a third option: intervene. He stood up, voice firm but calm. "Stop. You're making a mistake. Negotiations take time. Rash actions will only make things worse." The hijacker spun around, gun aimed directly at him. "Who are you to tell me that?" "Just a passenger," Traoré replied steadily. "But I understand negotiations. Violence weakens your position." The hijacker hesitated, confused by his confidence. "Why do you talk like that? Who are you really?" "A diplomat," Traoré answered, choosing truth without full disclosure. "If you want, I can help. I know how these talks work." A pause. The hijacker looked to his comrades. After a flurry of whispers in Arabic and French, their leader gave a nod. "All right, diplomat," he sneered. "Let's see what you've got. Come with us." The passengers watched in stunned silence as Traoré walked toward the cockpit. "God protect you, my son," the old woman whispered. Inside, the cockpit was tense. The pilot and co-pilot were pale, sweat beading on their foreheads. One hijacker manned the radio. "Who is this?" the negotiator on the other end asked. "A diplomat. He wants to help," the hijacker replied. "This sounds like a trap," the voice from the ground warned. "No," Traoré spoke clearly. "I'm just a passenger. I want to help resolve this peacefully. Nobody here wants bloodshed." He took a moment to study the hijacker leader's face. "Let's talk. What do you really want?" 10 million and the release of 3 men, the leader said. "Who?" "Malik al-Zim, Riyad Hamoudi, Omar Banani," he answered. "They're not terrorists. They supported the Tuareg uprising in Mali. They fought for justice." Traoré nodded, keeping his tone respectful. But inside, his mind was racing. He now had names, motivations, a cause, and possibly an opening. What came next would not only determine the fate of the passengers on board, but could shape the geopolitical future of the Sahel. Traoré immediately recognized the names. Malik al-Zim, Riyad Hamoudi, Omar Banani. These weren't just any prisoners. They were symbolic figures across West Africa, accused of attacking French military facilities, yes, but also hailed by many as voices against French neocolonialism in the Sahel. "I understand," Traoré said carefully. "And the money, what's it for?" "For the struggle," replied the leader, "to keep fighting until France's grip on Africa ends." Traoré nodded slowly. The ideology was clear. Resentment against France ran deep across the region, and though he shared some of those sentiments, he had chosen diplomacy over violence. "What are your names?" he asked. "I'm Youssef," said the leader. "These are my brothers, Hakim, Jamal, and Ahmed." "Youssef," Traoré began, his voice calm and deliberate. "I want to help, but you must understand, hostage situations are long and complex. Governments, especially France, won't make concessions easily. They need to appear strong." Youssef's expression hardened. "We are not terrorists. We want justice. We fight the colonialists draining Africa's lifeblood." "I hear you," Traoré replied. "But have you tried other ways? Filing a case with the African Union? The International Criminal Court?" "We tried," Youssef said bitterly. "No one listened. My brothers have rotted in prison for 7 years. No trial, no voice. We were done waiting." Traoré now saw the path forward. These were not hardened terrorists. They were desperate men clinging to a cause. That meant they could be reasoned with. "What's your plan if your demands are met?" Traoré asked. "How will you escape?" The men exchanged nervous glances. They hadn't thought it through. "We land in Mali," Youssef said, "then escape across the border." Traoré shook his head. "That won't work. The moment you land, special forces will be waiting. You'll lose control, and your lives." Youssef's eyes flickered with doubt. "Then what do you suggest?" Now was the moment. Traoré leaned in. "Change your destination. Go to Niger. French influence there is weaker. Stay in the air. Don't land unless absolutely necessary. Release a gesture of goodwill, children and elderly passengers, and refine your demands. Not just money. Demand fair trials, medical access, legal representation, things the world can support." Youssef stared at him. "Why should I trust you? Maybe you're a French agent." Traoré gave a small smile. "I'm African, like you, and I want freedom for our continent. I just fight for it differently." The logic was hard to ignore. Youssef left to discuss it with the others. In the cockpit, the pilot turned to Traoré, whispering, "Who are you, really? You're not just a diplomat." "Just a passenger," Traoré replied, smiling again. The pilot wasn't convinced. Minutes later, Youssef returned. "We accept your plan. We'll go to Niger, stay airborne, and release the children." Traoré raised an eyebrow. "How will you release children in the air?" Youssef blinked. He hadn't thought that far. "Unless you're planning to throw them out with parachutes," Traoré added. Youssef flushed, embarrassed. "Maybe we can show trust another way," Traoré continued. "Record a video. Show the children and elderly are safe and well. Send it to the negotiators." Youssef nodded. "Good idea. Let's do it." Traoré was slowly earning their trust. It was now clear the hijackers had not planned for details. Their anger was real, but their mission was fueled by emotion more than strategy. Youssef radioed the negotiator. "Change of plans. We're heading to Niger, not Mali. We'll stay in the air. You'll receive a video soon, showing the children are unharmed." The French negotiator was caught off guard. "All preparations were made in Mali." "Plans have changed," Youssef snapped. "Fuel us in Niger. We're not landing until our demands are addressed." In a low voice, Traoré leaned toward Youssef. "Now's the time to calm the passengers. Show leadership. Order your men to distribute food and water. Let the people breathe." Youssef considered it, then nodded. He returned to the cabin and instructed his men to hand out snacks and bottled water. At the same time, he asked them to bring the children to the front to shoot the goodwill video. When Traoré returned to the cabin, he was met with dozens of terrified eyes. The elderly woman beside him looked up, her voice trembling. "What's happening, my son?" "The talks are moving in a good direction," he whispered gently. "Don't worry. The children will be brought forward. A message will go out showing they're safe." She exhaled shakily and placed her hand over his. Above them, the aircraft veered eastward toward Niger, toward uncertain skies, but perhaps toward a resolution. The front cabin of the plane grew quiet as the children and their mothers were brought forward. 6 little ones, ranging from a wide-eyed 3-year-old to a nervous 11-year-old, stood holding tightly to their mother's hands. Their faces were pale with fear. Ibrahim Traoré stepped toward them. He knelt, lowering himself to their eye level. "Hello," he said softly. "My name is Ibrahim." "What are your names?" One by one, the children whispered their names, glancing nervously at the armed men nearby. Traoré smiled at each of them. "I know this is scary," he said gently, "but you're very brave, and you're going home soon. Want to play a game? We're going to make a video. You'll smile, wave, and say you're okay. That video will help get you back to your families." Something in his voice reassured them. Slowly, the children relaxed. Traoré turned to Youssef. "You see," he said, "comfort matters. When children are scared and mothers are panicking, everything becomes harder." Youssef looked at him curiously. "Have you done this before?" "I've had crisis training," Traoré answered simply, true, though still hiding his full identity. The video was recorded. With Traoré guiding them, the children smiled and waved. "We are safe," they said. "Please help us." The footage was sent to the negotiators. Time passed. The aircraft kept circling above Niger. Fuel was running low. The clock was ticking. Traoré returned to Youssef. "You need to decide soon. Fuel's dropping. What happens if they don't meet your demands?" Youssef's face showed worry. "I don't know. We wanted our brothers released. That was the point." "But is that realistic?" Traoré asked gently. "Maybe not, but improving their prison conditions, securing a fair trial, getting international attention, those things are possible." Youssef paused. "But if I accept that?" If I back down now, wasn't it all for nothing? Traoré shook his head. Number, it means you're adapting, being smart. You're still fighting, just with strategy instead of desperation. Right then, the cockpit radio crackled. The French negotiator's voice came through. Youssef, update. A commission will be formed to review the prisoners' treatment. We've agreed to improve their conditions, but release is not an option at this time. Youssef looked at Traoré, uncertain. What do I do? This is your opening, said Traoré. Negotiate safe landing. Release the hostages. You've already made your point. What about us? Youssef asked quietly. What will happen to me and my brothers? Traoré saw it clearly now. These weren't hardened criminals. They were idealistic, desperate young men, out of their depth. If you surrender peacefully, that will help you in court. No one's been harmed. That matters. It shows you still have a conscience. Youssef conferred with his group. Finally, he nodded and picked up the radio. We accept. Begin discussions for a safe landing. The negotiator responded quickly. You can land at Nami Airport. Everyone's safety will be guaranteed. But Traoré raised a hand. Wait. If you land in Nami, French special forces will be waiting. It'll be over. You'll lose everything. Then what do we do? Youssef asked. Divert to Ouagadougou, Traoré suggested. In Burkina Faso. It's more neutral ground. France has less influence there. Youssef squinted at him. Why Burkina Faso? Isn't that still under France's thumb? Traoré smiled knowingly. Not anymore. Things have changed. As the aircraft turned toward Ouagadougou, Traoré prepared for the final moment. Youssef, he said, when we land, you'll be surrounded, but surrender peacefully, and you'll survive. You'll have a voice in what happens next. They'll arrest us. Yes, said Traoré, but you'll live, and you might still help your brothers, legally, peacefully. Youssef hesitated. Then he nodded. We'll land and release the hostages. The plane touched down in Ouagadougou just before dawn. Special forces were visible on the tarmac, but they held position, waiting. First, the children and elderly were escorted off safely. Traoré turned to Youssef. Now, I want to leave too. Youssef narrowed his eyes. Why should we let you walk away? Who even are you? Traoré slowly removed his sunglasses and cap. Because I am Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso. The color drained from Youssef's face. That's impossible. It's true, said Traoré, and I still want to help you. If you surrender now, I guarantee your safety. You'll get a fair trial here. Youssef's hand twitched toward his weapon. Maybe we should keep you as a hostage. Traoré didn't flinch. I'm the most valuable hostage you could have. But if you harm me, the soldiers outside won't wait. You know how that ends. Youssef froze. A long, painful silence followed. Then, slowly, he lowered the weapon. What do you want us to do? Lay down your arms, release the hostages, walk out with me, peacefully. Youssef turned to his brothers. They exchanged a final look, then they nodded. Minutes later, the cabin filled with relief as passengers were told they could leave. Ibrahim Traoré walked down the stairway first, Youssef and his companions just behind him. A stunned officer approached. Mr. President, you were on that plane? Yes, said Traoré quietly. And these men are under my protection. They're surrendering peacefully. Later that day, Traoré addressed the nation and the world from the steps of the presidential palace. Today, he said, we witnessed the power of dialogue over violence. These young men fought for a cause, but they chose the wrong path. In the end, it was words, not weapons, that brought us home safely. A journalist asked why he hadn't revealed himself earlier. because revealing my identity might have escalated the situation. My goal was simple: no lives lost. Another reporter asked what he had learned. "That violence is never the solution," said Traoré. "Empathy, dialogue, and courage, those are the real tools of leadership. And a true leader must walk among his people, not above them. Because power doesn't reside in palaces, it lives in the hearts of the people." As the press conference ended, news of Traoré's quiet heroism spread around the world. What began as a hijacking ended as a lesson in humility, courage, and the extraordinary strength of calm leadership. Burkina Faso had not only survived the crisis, it had reminded the world of Africa's rising voice.